My IT pro friend shamed his cheating wife in front of hundreds of people. Now the entire city knows she's a whore. This all went down before smartphones were everywhere, back when life was a little less connected. So I had this buddy, let's call him Bob. Bob was always a bit suspicious of his wife's social circle, especially after one of her closest friends got caught cheating and tried to drag Bob's wife down with her. Bob didn't have any solid proof at the time, so things cooled off for a bit. Now, Bob wasn't just your average guy. He was an IT wizard, really knew his way around computers and networks. Fast forward nearly a year and Bob starts noticing his wife acting shady again, especially after she went to her high school reunion. He confided in me and we tossed around a few ideas, one of which was him jokingly mentioning a keylogger, but eventually Bob just asked me to drop it and, more importantly, don't tell anyone, not even your wife. A couple of months roll by and one early morning around 5:30 to 6:00, I'm getting ready for work when I get a Facebook Messenger notification. It's a link from Bob, but sent in a group chat. This chat included literally everyone we knew, her family, his family, our friends, strangers, you name it. It looked like a phishing link at first, so I didn't open it, even though it was from Bob, who's usually super careful about these things. Not long after, I get an email from Bob with some ominous, unsavory comments and the same link. This time, it's a group email with all the recipients openly copied. His wife's work, her family, her friends, his family, and even people I didn't recognize. That's when I knew it was legit, so I clicked on it. The link took me to a hastily thrown together website packed with pictures and videos of his wife with another man. This wasn't some hidden camera footage either. It was screenshots, even video screen captures, weeks and weeks of them. Bob had added snarky captions and colorful names for his wife and her lover. It was an overwhelming amount of evidence. Videos of her masturbating with her lover, chat logs where they couldn't wait to hook up again, solo masturbation videos of both her and him, tons of pictures. And the kicker? She was trash-talking Bob to her lover, making comments about how much bigger and better he was. The way she stroked her lover's ego was particularly gut-wrenching. I dropped everything and called Bob. He was drunk, combative, had been up all night making that website while drowning himself in booze. He had nothing good to say about women at that point. He was a mess. But after some work, I managed to convince him to take the site down before it did irreparable damage to his marriage, their careers, and their kids. As he's sobbing and logging in to remove the site, I hear loud yelling in the background as his wife bursts into the room. A screaming match breaks out, and there's nothing I can do to reel him back in. Apparently her mom or sister saw the page, blew up her phone until she woke up, and then she saw it herself and went on the offensive. The call drops after about 30 seconds of her screaming, while Bob's calling her every name in the book. After that, I couldn't get in touch with him again. The site stayed up the rest of the day, and Bob even put a view counter on it. Hundreds of people ended up watching her masturbate with a married former classmate. Bob had done his homework though. He'd installed a keylogger that recorded everything on the screen. Whenever he was out, she'd log into the PC and Facebook to play around with her boyfriend. Bob tracked down her lover, his family, his wife, her family, his job, the whole shebang. All these people were added to the Facebook and email groups. I don't know what happened to her lover or his marriage, but I know what became of Bob's life. His wife was desperate to fix things, offering him anything to make amends. But in the end, it was her comments about her lover's prowess that did her in. Bob tried to take her back, even after all their friends and family had seen her naked and cheating. But he just couldn't get past those comments about his manhood. Bob eventually left her, packed on about 100 pounds, and then moved as far away as possible, becoming a shell of the person he once was. I've lost touch with him. He went scorched earth on most of his friendships and family ties. As for her, she's let herself go and now looks like a bowling ball with legs. The line forms at the rear. A former friend set a trap for his cheating wife, then shared all the dirty evidence with her friends, family, employer, and the boyfriend's wife, family, and employer. Lives were shattered. Now on to the next story. My wife slept with Supervisor for promotion. Now he lost both his job and family. I'm 28 and I recently discovered that my wife, who's also 28, had an affair with her former boss. a 35-year-old man who's married with kids. We have been together for 5 years now, and our firsts in love and life were all done with each other. We've known each other from our very childhood and now live across the street. It used to be 5 steps away after we just moved in together. She has been the only constant in my life since then. Just looking at both of us really shows how much love comes from broken homes. Every day I wonder whether it was we who changed things for the better. No, that's what I tell myself anyway. She had been working from home ever since I got my start doing so as well, but now the missus is back out at work. She's in a field where women are few and far between, and later she could tell me about how her place of employment was very much like a boys' club. The guy she had an affair with, her boss at the time, and now supposedly one of the good ones who watched out for her on job-related matters. It wasn't long ago at all that the wife got a promotion, and I was absolutely beside myself with joy. She had become a manager now, which meant assuming more duties than before, in addition to needing several business trips per year. Her first trip occurred just last week, from Wednesday through Friday. Before she left, I told her that cheerleaders at home would give impromptu performances. She told me on the telephone that she was leaving her heart with me. "Take good care of it," she said, that phrase she always uses when we're separated for long periods of time. Earlier this week, she came home from work strangely than usual, and I knew right off something was amiss. She looked very upset indeed, and there was a red mark on her right cheek. My wife is fair-complexioned, so bruises easily, that I asked her what had happened at once, but all she said was "hold me," and then she nestled close to me. It was only after a few minutes that she got up from where she had sat me on the couch and told me what had happened. My whole world. She admitted that she slept with her ex-boss when this business trip took place. For me, it was even difficult to understand at first. It felt as though I were watching someone else's life collapse. Or perhaps she would reveal that the whole thing had been nothing but a giant joke. Actually, I think a dirty prank would have been preferable. I was in a daze and said not one word while she confessed this. Cheating strikes a particularly raw nerve with me, as it does with many people. When my father had an affair, my own family was torn apart. It was I who caught him and told my mother. Even now, my relationship with Dad is strained because he still blames me for destroying the family, never forgiven me. And she knew all of this. She knows too well how my family was wrecked by infidelity, which was enough toffee words for her even to think about letting me go. She even supported me as a teenage boy over this issue, and now she has done the same? Apparently the matter came up on one occasion when the man's wife discovered it and challenged him and my wife at their own place of work. This turned out to be quite a scene, with employees and customers looking on, partly out of amusement, but mostly in sheer astonishment. The woman called my wife white trash and slapped her across the face. After that, some employees stepped up and escorted the woman out of the building. My wife telephoned her elder sister afterward. She needed to tell everything, she admitted to her sister. But I just sat there speechless. She said something to me. The only thing I was able to think of asking was just what did happen on that business trip. The other evening, she explained to me she went out drinking with the other team leads and stayed out late as she thought she had to join in for team bonding. As one guest after another left until only she and her former boss were left, he suggested going back to his room for some music. My wife went along with it. He kept on flattering her, saying how lovely she was and that if he were me, he could not help but caress her. At long last, he kissed her. My wife asserted that she was not thinking properly at the time and allowed him to go right on kissing her until they made love. I just couldn't bear to listen to anymore, so I stood up and told her to cut it out. When she reached out to take my hand, I pulled it away and told her not to. She began to cry. She apologized again and again, pleading with me for forgiveness. She said that she felt it was the biggest mistake of her life. She hated herself for it and wished she could undo everything. "I only love you," she kept repeating. "There's nobody else but you." The alcohol had also confused her sense of values. "He really needs to leave," I told her. "Go call your sister to pick you up." She got up, still crying, and endeavored to embrace me, but I moved away from her once more. She kept exhorting me not to do this, suggesting she should quit her job or let me have full access to her telephone, see a psychiatrist. But I couldn't bear it any longer. I told her if she didn't go, I would leave. I didn't even take time to pack a bag. I just walked out of the house. Seizing my arm, she tried to prevent me from departing, and she was still begging for mercy after all that we'd been through. Heartrending in any case to think of her like this. As I left her behind weeping, it was as if my heart were being torn from my chest. 'Cause I still love her. I loved her more than I ever thought possible to love another person. But she wrecked me. She destroyed everything we had built up together, everything we might have had. Driving to my mother's place, where I am staying now, I do not know how I managed to make the whole journey without breaking down. As soon as I arrived, however, I burst into tears. I don't think my own mother has ever seen me cry, not since I was a little boy anyway. The only person who has ever seen me cry is my wife. When I visited my mother, I simply told her what had happened and tried not to hide anything. I couldn't. She felt the same as I did about it. They've always been close. She treated my wife as though she were her own child. She left judgment to someone else and only told me that she was welcome in her house for as long as it took me to get set up again. After I left, my wife has been constantly calling and texting me, but I haven't answered. The text begged me to go home. They beg me to talk to her, they beg me to say where I am, and they beg me not to give up on her. I feel so very lost and hurt. I thought I'd known suffering, but nothing compares to actually living the experience. I never thought my wife could take that approach. I'd always thought the saying, once a cheat, forever a cheat, was true. It would have meant obliterating a relationship. However, I keep wondering whether I should give us another chance, whether to live in counseling, rebuilding the future out of our collective past. I can't help but keep thinking about our history, how much I love her, how we always fitted together so perfectly, and how when I really had none else, there was always her. This week has been the most agonizing of my life. Nothing seems stable anymore as everything crumbles around me. I'm struggling through this alone as my wife, my best friend and greatest source of support, is no longer by my side. Doubt had been growing in my mind, so yesterday, I decided to reach out to the other person hurt in all this, hoping she could provide the clarity I so desperately sought. She had no reason to skew the truth or withhold information. I searched for and found her on Facebook, sending a message requesting we talk. She responded swiftly, offering a video call. I agreed to speak with her right away. Even before a word was said, I could see in her eyes she shared my affliction. She told me how, after being removed from their work last Monday, she tried contacting me but could not find my information. Apparently, one of the last things she said to my wife was that she intended to tell me everything. As she said this, I recalled my wife rushing home that day, and her sister insisting I hear the news directly from her. I asked if she knew more about what truly happened on the work trip, or if it was truly just a one-time mistake, and how she came to discover the deception. What she divulged confirmed my darkest fears. Their relationship had been unfolding long before that trip. She showed documented proof, texts revealing in profound emotional infidelity. Sharing her screen with me, I could barely maintain my composure viewing what was exposed. She explained that last January, she noticed her husband withdrawing and losing interest. On a few occasions, she saw him messaging my wife purportedly about work, but he hand-waved it as nothing of import. The day before their vacation, when bringing him something left behind at the office, she found him with my wife, standing close in an intimate manner, joking and smiling in a way that seemed flirty. Upon noticing her arrival, they abruptly separated, with my wife appearing panic-stricken while her husband pretended all was well. That was when she knew something untoward transpired between them, though she opted not to immediately confront him, wanting irrefutable evidence he couldn't weasel out of. Following their trip, her husband distanced himself further and dismissed her advances. That night, awaiting his slumber, she inspected his phone. Within his text thread with my wife laid everything, intimate exchanges preceding their vacation. It began as emotional infidelity, with AP professing inability to focus at work around my wife's presence. The messages evidence AP initiating pursuit of my wife, though her lack of rebuttal mattered not. Some texts prior to their trip saw AP disparaging his wife, lamenting her repeated miscarriages. It was revolting how he spoke of her to my wife. Repeatedly he asserted perhaps needing a woman like my wife. There were Thursday evening drinks invitation texts to my wife and morning messages evidently denoting they copulated. My wife thereafter ceased responding. I found myself at a loss, unable to escape the turbulence of the situation. With care not to stir her sleeping children, she maintained a guarded exterior while inner turmoil raged. Though anger simmered just below the surface, confrontation would wait. Humiliation was to be had on her terms and in a public forum. Monday's light would bring her plan into action, laying bare wrongs for peers and patrons to judge. While intention had built over time, chance alone exposed the damning scene to another wronged wife, and retaliation knew no bounds. Attempts to stem the tide went unheeded as wrath poured forth. Targets broadened beyond the primary culprit to all complicit in betrayal. OBS then explained to me that her husband displayed no remorse after their confrontation, only fury towards her public outburst. I learned from her that AP was terminated the next day after the incident. One of the hardest things she ever had to do was sit her twins down and tell them everything, trying to explain it in a way they could understand. I knew exactly how she felt, remembering my own mother's anguish following my father's betrayal. OBS said this whole ordeal exposed her husband's true colors, and while he pursued another woman, my wife still played a role in their affair, and as a woman, she had no empathy or esteem for my wife. I told her I didn't fault her sentiments, that she deserved to feel however she wanted in that moment. She apologized on behalf of her husband's actions. I paused, searching for the right words, then expressed regret over my wife's part in it all. She said, "We're now stuck in a club together, a club our spouses unwillingly inducted us into, against our will." She asked about my wife and I's current situation. I replied that honestly, I didn't have a clue about our future, but that I wasn't staying with her for the time being. She wished me the best going forward, and I did the same for her in return. Before hanging up, we swapped contact information in case either of us ever needed someone who understands to talk to. Every raw emotion I had been feeling only intensified tenfold. I confided in my mother about what I had learned during our discussion, and though she still didn't pass judgment, I could tell she was upset with my wife too. A whirlwind of emotions raged within as I contemplated AP's downfall. A twisted sense of satisfaction emerged that his indiscretions had ravaged his life and health, though such vengeful thoughts brought me no pleasure. Immense guilt weighed upon me as well, for an innocent wife now faced losing her partner while her children's stability crumbled. How their young hearts would ache in the days to come, forced to reconcile all they held dear disintegrating before them. Against my wife too simmered anger, for her betrayal had not only destroyed our solemn vows but jeopardized my well-being. Our intimacy following her return offered no reassurance, as texts from that trip hinted at careless acts leaving me vulnerable to unknown risks. So many lives damaged by reckless actions, and in the wreckage only more hurt would be found.